State Policy Network could unlock housing supply. A new landscape analysis finds that America's housing shortage and climate goals are deeply intertwined, and that the solutions must come from the states. The report argues that the nation needs a dedicated state level housing policy network to coordinate research, advocacy, and leadership development aimed at building more homes sustainably and efficiently. While local governments often dominate zoning debates, state leaders control the most powerful levers for change, from infrastructure funding and permitting timelines to the alignment of housing growth with environmental and climate strategies. We know we have a housing accessibility and affordability crisis across America, said Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin during the National Governors Association Housing Policy Advisors Institute in December 2024. The challenge now is building faster, smarter, and in ways that protect our communities and natural resources. Fragmented systems undermine sustainable growth. The analysis underscores a familiar problem. National and local housing efforts often receive significant funding and attention, yet state capacity to plan and execute reforms remains limited. Interviews with leaders from Minnesota, Oregon, Massachusetts, California, and national housing groups revealed consistent barriers: fragmented advocacy, uneven access to data, and little coordination between environmental and housing priorities. This fragmentation has slowed the rollout of smart growth and climate-aligned housing strategies. Without coordinated state action, projects that could reduce sprawl, protect ecosystems, and cut transportation-related emissions remain stuck in regulatory limbo. The proposed network draws inspiration from successful models in other policy fields, such as the Partnership for Innovation in Education and the Economic Analysis and Research Network, where shared resources and common agendas have accelerated outcomes across states. Housing, the report argues, needs the same infrastructure to integrate land use, environmental, and energy planning into a unified sustainability framework, a blueprint for green housing policy alignment. The proposed state housing policy network would begin as a nonpartisan coalition focused on expanding housing supply while advancing environmental goals. Its mission would include strengthening state agency coordination, developing data systems to track carbon and land use impacts, and ensuring that new housing supports clean air, efficient transportation, and climate resilience. The report envisions the network as a hub that connects housing, environmental, and transportation officials with private sector partners. It would provide model legislation for low-impact development, create shared permitting standards that reduce delay and environmental uncertainty, and build a national knowledge base for sustainable infrastructure finance. A phased plan outlines how states could build this foundation. First, by creating a coordinating body and digital resource center. Next, by launching working groups focused on permitting, transit-oriented development, and green infrastructure. And ultimately, by establishing a 5-year strategic agenda with measurable outcomes for emissions, land conservation, and housing production. Minnesota's example, sustainability through density. Minnesota provides a case study in aligning environmental and housing priorities. After litigation temporarily halted Minneapolis 2040, a comprehensive plan that promotes density and eliminates parking minimums, the Minnesota Court of Appeals lifted the injunction on May 13, 2024, allowing the city's sustainability-focused zoning reforms to proceed. The ruling restored a plan that had become a national model for reducing car dependency and preserving green space by encouraging infill development. State lawmakers quickly followed with a clarification to the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, preventing future lawsuits from misusing environmental law to block climate-aligned housing. In parallel, the state advanced the People Over Parking Act, SF 3572, aimed at phasing out parking mandates that drive up construction costs and increase carbon emissions. Although the bill did not pass in 2024, it reflected growing bipartisan recognition that reforming parking and land use rules can yield both housing and environmental benefits. This coalition, encompassing YIMBY advocates, environmental groups, homebuilders, and business chambers, demonstrated how state action can reconcile growth with sustainability, creating a scalable model for other jurisdictions. Integrating housing, climate, and transit. Across the country, States are experimenting with policies that connect housing growth to emissions reduction, transit access, and climate adaptation. Colorado's SB 24174, enacted in 2024, ties affordable housing goals to transit oriented development and infrastructure investment, prioritizing projects that minimize vehicle miles traveled and support compact, walkable communities. In Connecticut, a 2025 housing bill advanced provisions to limit minimum parking requirements and promote denser, mixed use neighborhoods near transit, a key step toward reducing transportation emissions and improving air quality. Both states exemplify how policy alignment can transform housing reform into an environmental strategy. The report also emphasizes the need to modernize environmental review systems that often slow or block infill housing despite its climate benefits. Aligning permitting frameworks with state climate targets, the authors argue, could accelerate low impact construction while safeguarding natural resources, filling the policy gap between cities and federal goals. Existing organizations, including the National Governors Association, National Conference of State Legislatures, National Council of State Housing Agencies, and National League of Cities, already facilitate peer exchange. But none provides a platform specifically designed to integrate housing, climate, and infrastructure policy across states. The proposed network would fill that gap, ensuring that state leaders can access shared tools, standardized metrics, and case studies to guide decarbonized development. It would help align housing supply goals with the federal government's climate and resilience priorities, turning fragmented initiatives into coordinated action. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites presented by E+E Leader. For partnership opportunities, reach out to a member of our team.